You fall asleep fine, and then at 3 a.m, boom, heart racing, panic attacks, sweatiness. You have no idea what's caused it or what's going on. Or you sleep fine, but you wake up in the morning and panic or anxiety spikes and rises without a clear thought present. Today I want to talk a little bit about that. I want to show you that there's a biological reason for this. And with anything else around anxiety and anxiety recovery, the first step is understanding this. So in those moments that it happens, you can tie it back to the knowledge you have around it. The foundation, the knowledge, the understanding of anxiety is crucial. So I want to dive in a little bit in terms of what this is and what's going on biologically. Right? So in sleep, we have various cycles. Everyone does. These are various cycles like, light sleep, REM, rapid eye movement, deep sleep, those kind of things, right? And to fluctuate and move between those cycles of sleep, we use the hormone known as cortisol. It's mostly known as a stress hormone, but it also is a fluctuation hormone, right? To take us through these various levels. So let me just draw that out for you to kind of illustrate it a little bit better, right? We have this diagram where basically we have low, just to illustrate, mid and high cortisol, right? And we go through the phases of sleep. So from say 10 p.m., whatever it's for you, to 7 a.m., through the stages of light sleep, rapid eye movement, deep sleep, right? Or light sleep again. I don't know the exact order in these. It doesn't matter for this point. And what you'll see is that for everyone, by the way, not just people who have anxiety or are sensitized, you'll see that it kind of looks like this. The cortisol fluctuates. And what you see with people that aren't sensitized, like myself now, not sensitized to cortisol, you see that we have a threshold to cortisol. See it like a tolerance level around here. That's your threshold, right? And as you can see, the waves, the peaks of cortisol don't hit that threshold. Now, what you'll have when you are in the anxiety cycle, or what we call sensitized, when you're on high alert, is that naturally your levels of cortisol tend to be a little bit higher. Why? Because anxiety or your nervous system is trying to keep you safe, right? So it's kind of making sure you're always on this more high alert state. So if the threat shows up, you can act on it. So that means that those waves, and again, maybe a bit of an exaggeration, just to bring the point home, they'll be a little bit higher than, for example, someone who isn't sensitized. But also, the threshold you have towards it is also lower, right? So you see already now that there's a couple of points where the cortisol hits that level, or it gets close to it, or it kind of overshoots the threshold that you have put on this emotion, right? By your behavior. So naturally, when you get close to that in the middle of the night, that will wake you up, because the nervous system is, convinced you are in danger, because this threshold's like, okay, it tells the nervous system the threat's nearby. So it'll wake you up, and it will wake you up with all these uncomfortable, nasty symptoms that we tend to get when we feel cortisol, and maybe it adds some adrenaline to it to fight, which is why you end up waking up in a panic attack, right? And everyone has these waves, but as you can see, the difference between sensitized or not sensitized is that the levels of the waves are a little bit higher for cortisol and the threshold is lower. This is why you wake up in the middle of the night. So this means it's not random. It means you're not broken. It means that you're a little bit more sensitive to cortisol, and you have more cortisol throughout the night. That's the whole thing. And I know I talk about being sensitized quite often. And if you don't know exactly what that means, it basically means that once you get trapped in anxiety and you start responding in the wrong way, you basically confirm to the nervous system that we're in danger constantly, whereas we aren't. By saying, when anxiety shows up in whatever form, we start to resist it, telling the nervous system this has to go away, right? I talk about that a lot. And view it as a car alarm, for example, like a normal functioning car alarm. It would kind of go off if someone would, pull the door, or if the car would kind of move. But when you're sensitized, like a leaf could fall on the car, or a small gush of wind, and the car alarm would go off. It's very sensitive and it keeps you on high alert, releasing all these chemicals throughout the day. So your nervous system learned to detect threats at a lower threshold. And that reminds me of someone actually in the program. Her name is Jacqueline. She used to, when she started, she had only maybe 2 hours of sleep on a good night, right? And she would constantly be waking up because she was so sensitive, as we all are, to anxiety itself. It would wake her up and then she would go like, why can I not sleep? And put more stress and pressure onto it. Now she's learning to desensitize herself. She's learning how to respond to anxiety in the moments when she's awake or when she wakes up in the middle of the night. And what you see now is that she gets maybe 6 or 7 hours of sleep already and actually doesn't care about it as much. That's what you see when you desensitize, the thresholds goes up and the cortisol levels tend to go lower during sleep. Now, we also have this case of where in the morning, often people find that their anxiety is worse. I remember that for myself. And I kind of want to show you as well why that's the case biologically, once again, so you can actually remind yourself of it the next time it happens. So bear with me while I make some room to do my drawing for you guys, because you see that in the morning there's a natural cortisol spike. It happens to everyone. There's a 50% increase in cortisol from, the first 45 minutes after waking compared to when you were asleep. That's literally, again, everyone has that. So if we look at it again, low, mid, or high cortisol, this is you waking up, right? This is 15 plus minutes after waking, 30 minutes, 45 minutes after waking up. Roughly, right? What you see is that we have a different floor, whether or not you're sensitized or not sensitized. So for me at the moment, for example, right, from the moment I kind of wake up until 45 minutes after, you see that line looks a bit like this. And this is that floor that I was talking about, the level of cortisol I'll feel in the morning. And once again, not sensitized doesn't mean that it'll trigger anything else for me. It also means that I'm not going to find it. But what you see with people that are sensitized, like I used to be, like in the mornings would be worse because I would start off here. So it's like the same increase, the 50% increase that you have, but the floor is higher. So it's definitely more noticeable. And also, it tends to remind us and trigger anxiety because we really don't want it. So it triggers that knee-jerk reaction, which is resistance, which is making it worse. And I can actually illustrate you if this is actually, I'm not sure if you can see this, but this is one of the measurements that I have from my sleep tracking thing. And you can see that during the night, the stress levels are high, and in the morning it spikes up. And this is very rough, but it spikes up to prep me for the day, right? And also because I get up and go take a shower. But it's like that, it helps you prep. So it's good to know and to expect in the mornings, anxiety to be higher, or at least cortisol to be higher, and that feels unpleasant, feels like anxiety symptoms that sometimes are things that could spiral us into panic. That's why also you get this before a single thought. People ask me like, I didn't even think a catastrophic thought, I didn't even think about anxiety, but still I woke up with panic. This is the reason. So remind yourself of it, because once again, in this case, knowledge is power, right? We want to understand this at least a little bit so you can remind yourself and practice allowing it to happen more, because it's just a biological process and your floor is a little bit higher because you've been responding in the wrong way to anxiety, and maybe you're learning to do it in the right way. So, and also the last thing I kind of want to cover, which is also a very important thing, is what we call the pressure trap. It's why trying harder is actually making it worse. Because the moment when sleep becomes something you have to get right is the moment the nervous system will start seeing sleep itself as a threat. Something we need to nail, something we need to do right, something we need to always have a control over. Whereas with sleep, that's not the case, right? And when the nervous system sees it as a threat, it will release cortisol. And cortisol, or adrenaline, is the exact hormone you don't want to have to fall asleep. Right? It's the opposite kind of chemical you need to actually fall asleep, right? Let me also draw that out. Bear with me. So it looks like this. I'm hoping you can see this. We put pressure on the whole sleep thing. I must sleep or, right? So in most cases, a lot of cases actually, the pressure we put on sleep is actually saying, if I don't sleep, I'll get more anxiety tomorrow. Often people have that, when they have lack of sleep, anxiety tends to be a little bit worse. It gets harder to actually be aware, harder to respond. So often they put pressure on themselves to sleep so they don't have anxiety in the morning, or to maybe, perform at work or whatever. So we put pressure on it. There is a need for us to sleep. What does it do? It actually rises or increases or cortisol, as I said, right? Cortisol rises because brain thinks it's threat. Sleep is a threat, right? We need to nail it. We need to get it. It's a must. It's pressure. It's a threat. It's a threat. Cortisol naturally rises, right? And that's basically the wrong chemical. Wrong chemical to sleep, at least, right? There's other use cases for it. That's when you wake, as we said, or you can't sleep. Cortisol will wake you up because there's obviously a danger, there's a threat. You need to fight, freeze, or you're not unable to fall asleep. This is what happened to me often. That I was in no way able to fall asleep because I was so filled up with all these stress hormones, right? So we wake up, or we cannot sleep. We maybe feel the heart beating. We feel all these nasty symptoms of anxiety, right? And then we basically get more fear and more pressure. Right, so there's more fear added and more pressure because we obviously don't know how to deal with these symptoms. We fear the symptoms and we put more pressure on it because we get less sleep, wake up more. So there's more pressure of what am I doing wrong? I need to sleep, otherwise X, Y, Z. That's that. I like cycles. We draw out a lot of cycles. I hope this kind of resonates. And what you see is that your bed becomes a conditioned threat, right? So your brain learns that sleep is dangerous because sleep is very important and it often uses a lot of cortisol to keep you up or wake you up, and you respond in the wrong way to it, making it very confirming that danger, confirming that threat, making it a conditioned threat. So even going to brush your teeth or going upstairs, going to your bedroom, reading a book, whatever, could already kind of make that nervous system go into more of a high alert state because it knows sleep is very important. There's people that I talk to, people that help that Google sleep all the time, think about sleep during the day all the time. So for the nervous system, it obviously is incredibly important. So we need to be adrenalized for it. We need stress hormones. Obviously, in order to sleep, we don't need those chemicals. Sleep is a result. It's not an action. So you cannot actually push yourself into sleep. So the whole thing I must sleep or else, it's basically a threat signal, and your nervous system believes you and will try to help you. So just to kind of recap, what happens is that in the middle of the night at 3 a.m. or whatever it is for you, you see that the cortisol rises, those natural waves where you have a lower threshold, and it's at these points that you wake up in a full-blown panic attack or with symptoms, right? That is what's going on, right? So it doesn't mean that there's anything wrong. It doesn't mean that there's anything to be worried about. It's just becoming aware of these moments. So when you wake up in the middle of the night, go oh wait, these are the fluctuations of that cortisol. My lower threshold means that it will wake me up naturally. Right? And you see as well that the more you put pressure on it, the more you start scanning, the more you put emphasis on the need to sleep, the less you actually do. So the whole key is to treat it as that wave that comes over you that you cannot do much about, like all the other stuff I talk about in all the other videos. Go check them out. And treat it as something you understand and you don't have to do anything about. You can actually allow it to happen because that peak will rise and fall naturally. And once you stop caring as much about sleep, you'll see that you get more of it. Like Jackie, I don't know if you're watching. If you do, Jackie, this is a shout out to you because she's learned that, it's pointless to try and control it and put pressure on it, just making it worse. And she's way less caring of sleep now. Not to say that, obviously you want sleep, but it's like out of my control. I can only do my best, and I can, the only thing I can do is to basically say I'm gonna add stress to it, make sure I don't sleep, or I'm gonna allow sleep to happen naturally, even though I'd like to have more of it. So recovery doesn't change any of these waves. They happen naturally, biologically for everyone, but they bring down that cortisol level, and obviously your threshold goes up, so it doesn't actually wake you up anymore. To recover, we really just kind of need to get out the way and stop fueling it ourselves, because the nervous system wants to regulate, it wants to drop down those cortisol levels and raise your threshold. We just need to get out the way. I hope this resonated. If you want to know more about what to actually do in the middle of the night when you wake up, or how to deal with it in the morning, I have a separate video on that on my YouTube channel. I'll put the link below. It will actually teach you more on how to allow this to happen, and what you can tell yourself, and how you can take away some of the pressure on sleep that apparently doesn't help you sleep, right? So it's about taking away that fuel so the problem stops becoming a problem, and that's when you get more sleep, right? So you can't truly allow something without understanding it, and I'm hoping today you start to understand, or you've seen a little bit on how this works biologically. So in the moments in the middle of the night or in the morning, you can remind yourself of what you learned and start practicing at least to say, okay, this is out of my control, I'll allow it to be. But once again, check out the other video to learn a little bit more about that. I'm hoping this has been helpful. As always, tell your friends, like, subscribe, all that stuff. Put in the comments what you think and what other videos you might be interested in, and I'll see what I can do. So thank you for watching.